Greetings, this is the Grumpy Old Slan, and today I'm redrawing the Gamma World artifact chart. This is the mini game you play whenever characters have found some artifact in the ruins of Gamma World and are trying to figure it out. Every edition of the game has come up with a different way of doing this, and the first edition method is still my favorite. So you can see me redrawing it here. The idea is to clean it up, but also I give high intelligence characters a bonus on their die rolls, which obviously is positive when the intelligence is high, so like +1, +2, +3. And I give a penalty for low intelligence characters, so -1, -2, -3. And what you'd have to do for this chart to work is subtract the bonus and add the penalty, which I always find counterintuitive. So I'm doing two things here. I'm redrawing it so that the lines are clean and everything, but I'm also changing the numbers so that the bonuses can be added and the penalties can be subtracted from the die roll and the chart still makes sense. So for example, if you need to roll 1 to 5 to follow a certain arrow in the chart, I'm changing it for 6 to 10. If you have to go 1 to 3, that becomes 8 to 10. So the odds remain exactly the same, it's just the numbers, high becomes low, low becomes high. So you can see me redrawing it here. Second edition did this thing where you had a starting number, say 5, and then the character would roll a die, and the GM would also roll a die. The die would depend on the complexity of the item. Whatever number the game master rolled would be added to the starting number, and whatever the player rolled would be subtracted, and then that would become the new starting number. And when the starting number became 0 or less, that meant the character had figured out the artifact. And there was a certain condition, which I forget now, in which injury or destruction of the artifact could occur. It doesn't feel as fun to me as moving a token around and then rolling some more die. The other thing I've added is the amount of time it takes to do certain things. So a relatively simple item, each die roll is the equivalent of about a minute of time. Figuring out how to use one of the pass keys, the electronic cards that allow you to open doors, shouldn't take you hours and hours. Figuring out maybe how to operate a laser pistol shouldn't take hours. But figuring out how to use, say, a suit of power armor, that should take you longer. Certainly figuring out how to use what they call think tanks or a building computer, it's certainly not unreasonable to assume that it would take hours to do. What I've done is that for the simpler items, a die roll is the equivalent of a minute. For the more complex one, the middle charts, a die roll is the equivalent of 10 minutes. And for the more complex items, a die roll is the equivalent of an hour. And what that means is that if you're quite lucky and you basically take the fastest path from the starting square to the finishing square, it takes you a minimum of 4 minutes to figure out a simple item. And it is likely to take you longer. It is going to take you a minimum of 50 minutes to figure out a more complex item, and it will take you a minimum of 6 hours, possibly longer, because the GM may rule that you need breaks to eat and rest and sleep. It could certainly take several days to figure out a very complex item. And all this has an impact on gameplay. So maybe if you're hiding out from some enemy and you stumble across a laser pistol and you quietly try to figure out what this weapon of the ancient does, you have a chance that the enemy won't find you before you figure it out. But if you come across some very complex piece of equipment, say a power armor, it'll take you like an hour to figure out. You won't have time to figure out how to get into it and seal it up and then operate it in the space of a few minutes before your enemies catch up to you. And that's assuming they're hot on your trail. You might want to take that hour to figure out how to work a suit of power armor while you're exploring if there's no immediate threat. But certainly during that hour, some random encounters might be rolled, interrupting the whole process. Should that happen, I would allow players to continue the mini game at where they were at. But I might say, oh, it takes you one time unit, so either a minute or 10 minutes or an hour, to figure out where you were at. The other thing I do is that while it'll take you one run through the mini game to figure out how to use a laser pistol, I will make you play the game again to figure out how to change the power pack on said laser pistol. Running that mini game does not mean you know how to maintain the item, how to repair the item, or anything like that. In fact, for repairs, I would bring the mini game up one level of difficulty, with the very, very complex items being essentially unrepairable by player characters, since that requires teams of experts to do. If player characters are, say, trying to figure out how to use an item that's fairly simple and they break the item trying to figure it out, if players go, well, can I try to fix it? Then you go on to the next complexity chart and then you roll, and that'll take commensurate more time. First of all, if you come across the injury or item destruction on the second mini game trying to fix the item, it is permanently out of order. But if you do manage to fix it, it also means you automatically now know how to operate it because you had to sort of do both. And finally, I do give some bonuses to player characters who have seen the item in operation. So let's say they're attacked by somebody who's using a laser pistol and the person fires it. Well, they have some idea of how it was being held and saw something the person did before firing it, and that'll give them a bonus. Similarly, if they've operated a similar item, so if you say have operated a regular firearm, perhaps a needler or a laser pistol will not feel so alien, and thus you would get a small bonus. Maybe not on all the rolls, but maybe on some of the rolls. Maybe the number of rolls you get a bonus on is random and rolled by the DM. The DM rolls a 3, well, that means the first 3 rolls get a bonus. Since as you move forward in the mini game, it is increasingly difficult to move towards the end goal. That means the bonuses, while they could help you all the way, they're likely to only be helpful at the beginning. So that kind of balances out, I feel. I will be leaving a link to the PDF for anybody who cares to download it. I hope it's useful to some of you. This has been the Grumpy Old Slan, redrawing the Gamma World artifact chart, and I'll see you next time.